Welcome to the Female Church Leaders Podcast, a weekly resource for women who love God, love the church, and are called to lead. I'm your host, Kadi Cole, church leader, author, and executive coach. After more than 30 years in full-time ministry, often as the only woman at the table, I understand how meaningful yet challenging your calling can be. That's why I created this podcast, to remind you that you're not leading alone. Each week, I'll share practical tools, biblical insights, and honest encouragement for the real challenges female leaders face in ministry, so you can grow your skills, strengthen your faith, and lead with more confidence and joy without burning out or striving to prove yourself. We drop a new episode every Monday because Sunday is coming and you are going to be ready for it. One of the most common leadership challenges I see for women in ministry isn't lack of calling or confidence or capability. It's actually something much more practical. Their responsibility and their authority don't match. Women are often carrying significant responsibility without clear authority to make decisions, set direction, or shape outcomes. And when those two things are out of alignment, it creates confusion. Confusion for you, confusion for your team, and confusion for the people you're trying to lead well. Over time, that confusion turns into frustration, fatigue, and second guessing. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because leadership works best when responsibility and authority increase together. There are a few reasons this often shows up in ministry settings. First of all, the church world does not have standardized organizational structures. When I've worked in hospitals or universities or corporations, titles and roles tend to mean the same thing across institutions. A nurse manager in one hospital looks a lot like a nurse manager in another. But in churches, not so much. We create titles like coordinator, director, pastor, lead, associate, executive, often without shared definitions or clear decision rights. My first two staff titles were, quote, special assistant to the executive team and, quote, director of advancement. I still don't know what either of those titles actually means. I just call them girl titles. It makes it hard for you and everyone else to know what authority comes with your role, who decides what, and where does the accountability actually sit. Second, churches often grow faster than their structures can keep up with. Roles get created quickly to meet real needs. Then those temporary arrangements become permanent and job descriptions never quite catch up. What made sense for a season quietly becomes unsustainable long-term. And third, we can't ignore the reality that churches are still navigating gender and theology differently. Different views on titles for women, different comfort levels with authority, different assumptions often unspoken about who leads and how. And these differences, as people change churches and change jobs and move around the country, the differences show up in a congregation, on a staff, and even on a leadership team. None of this is usually intentional or personal, but the result is still the same. Responsibility increases, but authority stays unclear, either for you, the people around you, or both. So here's the leadership principle I want you to think about today. Leadership functions best when responsibility and authority are aligned. Even if titles are confusing, even if structures are imperfect, even if theology varies, you can still work towards more alignment. Because when responsibility outweighs authority, leaders will overfunction. And when authority outweighs responsibility, leadership credibility erodes. Both are unhealthy on either end of the spectrum, for the leader and especially for the church. Let me give you an example. I see this situation all the time. A woman is hired as a ministry assistant or coordinator, maybe in student ministries or small groups or something like that. She's seen as a support role, but in actuality, she's recruiting and training the volunteer team, planning the ministry calendar, solving problems, managing the budget, caring pastorally for people, basically holding everything together. Yet because her title is coordinator, she isn't consulted on long-term budget decisions. She isn't considered for advancement within the ministry, and she doesn't have authority to set priorities. Oftentimes, there's a male pastor who holds the title, the pay, and the authority, but isn't deeply involved in the day-to-day leadership of the ministry. He may be the one on stage, the congregation recognizes authority, but you're the one with the answers. If this is you, you're probably feeling, tired in a way that rest doesn't fix. Maybe you're hesitant to push back, frustrated that decisions land on you after the fact, and unclear about where your leadership actually begins and ends. That is not a motivation problem. That's misalignment. Now, the opposite imbalance shows up too, especially for roles like pastor's wife or if your church has a strong culture of nepotism. Sometimes a woman can carry a lot of influence in a room, but have very little defined responsibility. People will defer to her. Her voice carries weight because of who she is connected to, but she isn't actually personally accountable for implementation, communication, or outcomes. This imbalance creates its own kind of tension. It can feel awkward, especially for her. Her boundaries are undefined. Other leaders may struggle to understand or respect her. Her contributions can get minimized to hospitality, decor, or emotional support rather than mission, strategy, and leadership outcomes. And unfortunately, it can also undermine other female leaders who are carrying real responsibility without the same level of informal influence. Authority that outweighs responsibility isn't healthy either for you or the church. But our goal isn't more control, and it's definitely not simply demanding a title. Our goal is alignment. Responsibility and authority should be close enough together that leadership feels clear, sustainable, and effective for us and the people around us. So here's your one action step for this week. Take a piece of paper and on the left side, write down your top 3 responsibilities. On the right side, write down the authority that's been given to you. Who do you actually lead? What formal influence do you carry? What decisions are yours to make? Then take an honest look and ask yourself, does my responsibility and my authority match? Or am I out of balance in any way? Am I carrying more of one than the other? If you discover by looking at your list that you're carrying more responsibility than authority, here's where you can start. First, pull your actual job description. Now, not the version in your head, not the expectations that have slowly piled up over time, the real one, the one on file in HR. Of course, if you don't have a job description, that's not that unusual. So try to think back to the last job or role you were officially offered. Now ask yourself honestly, am I consistently doing more than what I've been asked or authorized to do? Many female church leaders are carrying responsibilities that were never formally assigned. They saw a need and they filled it, which may have been admirable at first, and it does make you a great teammate. But over time, this habit creates confusion and can leave you exhausted. So the goal here is to figure out if what you're doing matches what you've been given. And if it doesn't, it's probably time to have a calm, curious conversation with your leader that raises the issue, but without creating defensiveness or blame. You're really just trying to understand what they want from you. The conversation might sound something like this. Hey, here's a list of what I know I'm currently responsible for. But here's where I feel like I'm having to deliver on responsibilities I don't actually have the authority to be successful in. So these are the things that feel misaligned. Now, I want to be able to deliver on these responsibilities you've asked of me, but I also am very sensitive and don't want to overstep the authority I've been given. What would you like me to do? See, the key is to get your leader to understand the facts and the reality of the situation where your responsibilities and your authority don't match, and then let them help make the decision with you. Now, you can bring some real options. You can think about things ahead of time. Great leaders bring solutions, not just problems. So maybe you're doing too much, and it would be appropriate to figure out with your boss where you need to pull back. Sometimes we're doing things that our leaders have no idea about, or maybe they were priorities a year ago, but they're not that important anymore, and we're spending a lot of time on energy on a non-urgent issue. Or maybe your leaders want you to keep doing these extra work pieces that you have added on over the last several months or years, but you need additional authority to do it well. It is so hard to implement leadership if you don't carry the authority that is required to do it. So that authority could look like simply a clear job title so others in the church understand your role better. Maybe rather than assistant, you're the coordinator, or maybe rather than coordinator, you're the manager, or maybe rather than manager, you're the director, or director, you're pastoring. What is the title that matches the responsibilities that you've been asked for? A job title increase is one of the easiest things for a church to give because it costs them nothing, but it changes your life and your ability to lead dramatically. Maybe you need to ask to be included in decision-making meetings so that you hear things firsthand. It sometimes takes a while from the director's meeting to trickle down to where you're at. And so you're 2 weeks behind, or decisions have been made in between that you don't understand. So ask to either be in the meeting or maybe see the notes right away, or maybe your one-on-one with your leader happens right after the meeting where those decisions are made so that you hear things right away. Perhaps you ask to be invited into goal setting or vision conversations so you can offer your perspective proactively. Rather than trying to adjust to goals that are uninformed, you get to bring the data that informs those goals so it lines up with what you've been asked to do. Or Maybe you offer up some clearly defined ideas around decision rights so that you know what budget, priorities, and people you have the ability to lead without approval. We call them decision rights because it lets you know what decisions you can make on your own without checking with anyone else. And decision rights, having that be clear, can be such a huge time saver for you and your leader. See, doing more is only one option. Alignment between responsibility and authority is actually the better goal. And if this feels a little uncomfortable for you to be asking for these things, here's a key mindset shift I want you to remember. When you're clarifying this and bringing alignment, you're not actually simply asking for power or being arrogant about your leadership. I know many women worry that that's how they're going to come across. You're simply asking for clarity and alignment so you can lead responsibly and sustainably. It's even okay to begin the conversation that way and say, hey, I'm not trying to grab a title. I'm not trying to have more power, but I do want to make things clear, mostly for the people I'm leading. And I want to make sure I'm doing what you're wanting me to do. This brings clarity and alignment. Now let's talk about the other side. If you find that you have authority without clear responsibility, we want to bring that into alignment also. If this is you, the healthiest next step is not less involvement, it's clearer involvement. I often encourage pastors' wives to identify a role that matches their actual leadership capacity, the training and experience they already have, and the kind of impact they personally feel like God has called them to have, and then lead from that role, visibly, consistently, and accountably. Learn at the appropriate level, build credibility with the team through actual responsibility, and grow in your leadership from there. If you're unsure of what the answers to those questions are, here's a clarifying question to get you started. Ask yourself, if I were not married to this person, or if I were not best friends or related to that leader, would this be the responsibility and authority I would be carrying in this church? In my experience, many women, especially pastors' wives, have spent years supporting their husband in his calling, but have left their own calling undiscovered and underdeveloped. Now, the answer is not leveraging his authority more to tailor it to you. It's about earning your own way in your own calling. So begin praying and exploring with the Lord what his ministry calling is on your life, and embrace both the responsibility and the authority of the doors he begins to make clear to you. This is how you transform from leading because of proximity to leading because of calling, and your calling will be unstoppable. I hope you are beginning to see that when responsibility and authority are aligned, expectations become clearer, teams function better, leaders work healthier hours, resentment fades, and joy returns. This isn't about doing less ministry. It's about doing the ministry God has actually entrusted to you. Alignment is what allows leaders to stay faithful, fruitful, and joyful for the long haul. Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, people perish. This is a very popular verse, especially for pastors who are doing capital campaigns. But I actually like the Amplified version better. It says, where there is no revelation or vision from God, people cast off restraint. I'm going to read it again. Where there is no revelation or vision from God, people cast off restraint. That phrase, cast off restraint, really matters. See, when we don't have clarity about what God has actually called us to do, and just as importantly, what he has not called us to do, we tend to say yes to everything. We overcommit. We overfunction. We carry weight that isn't ours to carry. Not because we're trying to be disobedient, but because we're unclear. Lack of clarity, lack of God-given revelation almost always leads to lack of restraint. And that's where burnout quietly begins. We see this in Luke 10 with Mary and Martha. Martha isn't actually doing anything overtly wrong. She's serving, she's working, she's carrying responsibility, but she's taken on more than Jesus actually asked of her. She's responding to expectations, cultural expectations, relational expectations, internal expectations, rather than to invitation. I love how Jesus doesn't shame her. He doesn't even minimize her effort. He simply and gently recenters her, not toward doing more, but toward doing what aligns with his presence and purpose in her life. Then in Matthew 11, Jesus says something that feels especially relevant for us as leaders. Again, in the Amplified version, he invites us. Come to me, all you who are weary and overburdened, those of you who have taken on more than I require, and I will make you rest. Again, come to me, all of you who are weary and overburdened, those of you who have taken on more than I require, and I will make you rest. That's a profound distinction. Jesus doesn't say rest comes from doing less for everyone. And he doesn't say doing more is actually more godly. Rest comes from doing what he's asked of you, no more and no less. Leadership faithfulness is not measured by how much you carry. It's measured by obedience. And when we don't obey, he will make us rest. He will make us lie down in green pastures. Have you ever been made to rest by the Lord? It can look like burnout, but it can also look like the flu or shingles or an emotional overwhelmed breakdown, chronic pain, overweight, snapping at your kids or your teammates when they're trying their best, a sprained ankle from rushing to a meeting while trying to look sassy in high heels. Can you tell I might be speaking from personal experience here? This is Proverbs 29 in action. See, where there is no clear revelation of what obedience looks like, people cast off restraint. They say yes to too much. Clarity creates restraint. Restraint protects joy, and joy sustains leadership over the long haul. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And that kind of aligned leadership blesses everyone. If today resonated, you're not alone. This responsibility authority confusion is one of the most common issues female church leaders bring into our Closing the Leadership Gap cohort. CLG exists to help women clarify leadership expectations, build real decision-making skills, and lead with authority that matches their responsibility. Not by pushing harder, but by leading more clearly. You're not behind, friend, and you're definitely not failing. You're learning how to lead in a way that's sustainable and fruitful for the long haul. And we are here to cheer you on. I'm so glad we got to spend this time together on the Female Church Leaders Podcast. I hope you're walking away encouraged, equipped, and reminded that your calling truly matters. To keep growing, join us for our next Closing the Leadership Gap cohort at closingtheleadershipgap.com. It's a guided coaching experience, including live Q&A with me, designed to accelerate your leadership journey. If this podcast has been helpful to you, would you please take a moment to follow, rate, and share it? Your engagement helps the algorithms suggest our resources to female church leaders we haven't had a chance to meet yet. And don't forget to follow at Female Church Leaders on Instagram for encouragement and leadership tools designed just for you. You can also follow my personal feed at Kadi Cole, spelled Kadicole. Keep leading faithfully, keep growing your leadership gifts, and I'll see you next Monday because Sunday is coming and you are going to be ready for it.